역시 KT는 이번 리프트 라이벌을 통해서 확실하게 발전했어요.
게임, 뱀픽, 운영, 플레이 완벽했어요.
이게 하나 된 모습이죠. 이런 모습을 원했던 거고요.
1년 안에 이렇게 많이 성장한 게 저도 좀 놀랍고 운이 좋았던 것 같고 팬 여러분들이 많이 응원해 주시니까 더 잘 되는 것 같아요 이제.
Welcome back, everybody. We got another great day of LCK here. Good to be back at SPO TV. Finally, it's been 2 weeks since we've been here at the Nexon Arena. Papa, how are you feeling today?
I've been missing you, Brendan Valdez. I saw my SPO TV compatriots over at Rift Rivals. The Korean side was there, but your absence was conspicuous. Speaking of absences, KT Rolster's absence from that final match. Everyone wanted to see them against RNG. We knew who the Chinese representative in that 5th game of Rift Rivals would be, but the KT was denied. It was Afreeca Freecs who was sent out, and Afreeca Freecs was summarily dismissed. Now there's a bit of beef between the two squads, and it's going to be fun to see them face each other in a best-of-3.
Yeah, it said at the beginning, you know, it's a fierce battle in the middle of the rankings here at LCK, and it's kind of weird to say, right? Usually, even last split, the two teams here we have tonight, they went to Rift Rivals because they were top 4, but this time, it's 4th place versus 5th place, and it's a very big win that they need because right now, with Griffin coming in really hot up at the top of the rankings, Hama Life getting the new sponsor, the former Rocks Tigers, and now they're looking so much better. That's 2 extra spots that are being taken away from these other big names. And speaking of those big names, those 2 are playing tonight.
And if Griffin and Hama Life do occupy top 5 spots at the end of the season, which right now is seeming very likely, there's only 3 for the old guard. The old guard includes KT to some degree, Afreeca, but SKT, Kingzone, all these proud teams, not even mentioning world champions Gen G, will be playing in our 2nd series. We're running out of spots. The top 5, it used to just be KT, Afreeca, Kingzone. These teams slotting into spots 1 through 5. Just reorder them, you'll get the 5 teams. This season, very different.
It is very different, you know. It's kind of gotten very hard at the top, right? At the bottom, it's gotten a little bit softer, I feel. I feel like this season of LCK, it's really like 8 teams, and then Jin-Air's hanging on by a thread, and then BBQ's kind of just down and out at this point without a win. So, but all the other teams, they definitely could make it into the playoffs, even SKT, even though they're not looking that great so far.
I mean, Jin-Air only 1 match behind SKT, so we have the free chicken at the bottom. Sadly, BBQ basically, well, they're not mathematically, but basically stuck in relegations, and everyone else, Jin-Air making a late run, probably not going to happen, but Jin-Air getting out of relegations, very possible. So with all that parity, with 9 teams who could take games off each other, we're in a really interesting spot. Even tonight, who your favorites are, I think, can be left open to interpretation for tonight's matches.
Yeah, I think that this first match should go to 3 games. I feel like it's very evenly matched, but it's KT. You never know what's going to happen, and they could just fall flat on their face, or they could crush them 2-0. Speaking of which, speak of the devil, KT Rolster over here starting on the blue side in the Nexon Arena. You guys will notice that they have a couple of new players in their sub-roster. King in the top lane, Mia in the support role. But again, when you have this star-studded lineup, will they ever see play? Not so sure.
They also have a new mid laner. I think his name is Powen. I can't really pronounce it very well. I don't know where he came from, but he might be the mid laner as well if they want. I hear he plays Talon, so that's a good thing for them. UCAL's Talon let down the team a little bit. KT Rolster, they're 6th, and they came off a very strong Rift Rivals. 4 wins, 0 losses. A lot of people lamenting that they didn't play in that final match. But they're not even top 5, and right now, they feel like a strong 6. You do feel in your head like they'll be in playoffs, but right now, what's in your head doesn't always match the reality, and KT need to start winning sooner rather than later.
Yeah, they absolutely do need to get this win up against the Afreeca Freecs that are going to be over here on the right side. Currently in 4th place, I believe. Gen G sitting at 5th, so it's really thick right here in the middle of the pack at LCK. And look at this, we're gonna have Mowgli coming in to start up against KT Rolster instead of Spirit. Definitely an interesting decision by Afreeca.
And let the record show, I'm very tilted by this timing. We were denied Tarzan versus Mowgli in our previous series, the lore battle of all time. Instead, we get Mowgli today, and it's nice to see him back. But play him against Griffin in the second round robin, please.
Well, if he does well today, I would not be surprised to see him going up against Griffin. But we'll have to see how he does. He did get a shot to play in the spring LCK finals, actually, up against Kingzone. Looked okay. Did get the loss, though. It was his birthday also on the LCK spring final, so it was kind of unfortunate that he wasn't able to pull the team together. But we'll see how he does tonight.
Felt like it was Keen's birthday with some of those quadra kills and penta kills that he and Khan picking up at Rift Rivals. Big performances on the Darius there. I want to see him on the new Aatrox, but remember, Afreeca has been staunchly banning Aatrox on blue and red side.
Yeah.
Looking over to Rift Rivals, we get to see the trends as we've had our second Rift Rivals be completed. I've already been talking this week so far about the hangover for the Rift Rivals teams. Currently 1 match win and lots of game losses there for the Rift Rivals teams. Think of last year, it wasn't much better. So the teams that go over, they lose the ability to have the scrim practice in Korea, to stay in familiar settings and just be away from playing so often. And right now, it has been hurting the teams.
It really does speak to the level of the Korean teams, I feel also. If you're here, you're scrimming every single day for multiple hours a day, and you have all that time, you're not traveling, you're not getting tired, you're not going to any after parties, you're staying in the house, and you're just practicing. The numbers speak for themselves, and we'll see how long the hangover will last this time around. Currently, it's looking a little bit worse, actually. 1-4 compared to 4-4 for last year.
They are good, but why are they in 6th? There's a pretty apt way to describe the KT Rolster problem, and there's a lot of different explanations. Predictably, their transition to the mid to late game has not been great. Their early games have largely been strong, but their drafting has also been a bit all over the place in Korea. They were summarily beaten by Hanwha Life Esports. That was not a close series. KT always have plenty to work on. I'm going to be looking to see if Score can pick up the Kindred and put on some great performances.
Yeah, definitely one of the newer picks that we've been seeing on the current patch after the buffs that she did receive. It's definitely an interesting one. We've seen a lot of botched drafts recently. I definitely feel like the drafts are a little bit more important as everything's just changing so fluid in recent time with all the different changes and the new meta that we do have. But let's take a look at the Afreeca Freecs. We don't engage in fights unless it seems good for us. And I suppose that's true. Definitely a bit more of a careful team. Certainly no MVP on the Rift.
Haven't necessarily been as impressed with their drafts either, Valdez. They've got a lot to work on as well. They are starting Mowgli, as you mentioned, which is definitely a change in terms of identity. He's only played 2 games of Skarner and a game of Graves, so he's been very much on the sidelines this season. I think Spirit's been a little bit inactive in some recent games. He's been farming. You think of the Sejuani game and that match against RNG where he just, all of his lanes were losing. He didn't have much to show. Tucson is usually the man who makes it happen, the man who's known for his engages. Less of the Tom Kench, please. That's the one pick that we look at and say, surely any other champion, any initiator fits him better than the Tom Kench he's really struggled on.
Don't show us Tom Kench. I know it's pretty good in the current situation. Even on the red side, we've been seeing a lot of Sejuani first picks. On the blue side, it's definitely very enticing to pick up the Tom Kench, especially as Afreeca is starting on the red side. But we'll see if they go back to their roots. I mean, you could have had this same title for Tucson a year ago when he was really popping off and he was the big initiator for his team. Nothing has changed. But let's take a look at the focused matchup up into the top lane, Smeb versus Keen.
Some generic information here. We all know that Keen is the national top laner. Smeb has been looking good recently. Weirdly, it's the Mundo priority that's different. Smeb has been able to pick up the Mundo more recently, 4-0. Keen played his first Mundo game, didn't show much. I think Keen needs counterpick to be able to really allow Afreeca to play their game style they've been playing in summer seasons, different to his tank-only games in spring, whereas Smeb, predictably, he can be flexible, but he has critical errors, I think, more than a player of his stature is usually said to have.
Yeah, it's looking good on the Aatrox and the Mundo. Those have been the 2 top picks in the top lane so far on the new patch. But Aatrox does tend to get banned a lot on the red side. I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that once we do go into the bans. We were talking about how Afreeca even likes to ban that Aatrox on the blue side. Keen maybe has stepped away from the new Aatrox.
Smeb on your screen will be starting. I know people would love to see Rush. Sorry, Score, I should say. But Smeb on the mine. Score is going to be starting.
2 Smebs?
That'd be great.
Might be better. You never know. But guys, we're ready to go into pick and ban. Let's do it for game 1.
Loading in here. I wonder if we'll see any of these new substitute players. If KT Rolster did not pick up the game 1 victory on blue side. The Vladimir flex ban. Going to see this increasingly against Griffin, and Afreeca Freecs are also a fan of the awesome dudes over the traditional 80 carries, so we will see that Vladimir.
Yeah, and you'll notice the bans coming in on the red side. I feel like there's just 3 perma-bans, essentially. You see every once in a while, right, MVP versus BBQ, you see the Nocturne slip through, the Taliyah, maybe, but it's generally Aatrox, Taliyah, and Nocturne that you want to get rid of.
It's been a while since we've had those 3 must bans on the red side, but I agree. This has been the trend we've been seeing increasingly this week. These are the non-targeted bans, just targeted at power level, but Score has also been a great Nocturne player in the past. Felt like the LCK teams came into Rift Rivals with lower Zoe priority than specifically the LPL teams, and then Score, I should say Score, you think of EDG, we saw definitely they were able to scout there to make them look the fool with the Zoe picks. So it's going to be first pick tier. We've seen it fall through picks and bans, actually, in Korea. So the wavering of the Zoe priority has been pretty notable. However, the Kindred priority is only going up.
Yeah, it definitely is. Another pick is the Swain that we might be seeing coming in here for Afreeca. Definitely the Mundo is up towards the top. It's more in the first round of picks nowadays. Let's see what they want a second pick here on red side.
I'm more interested about the blue side when it comes to Mundo. We'll see what Afreeca make of potential for a Mundo. Usually in this spot, it would just be pretty safe, flexible option, especially if you have a bot lane player that doesn't just play 80 carries. And that's why we do see the Yasuo, a flex pick to be sure. The problem that is existing for teams with these bans as they stand is that if you don't take Mundo at Yukal's pick, Kuro can lock it in for Keen, and they can double ban these strong lanes into the Mundo. So Mundo can be a really interesting champion if you have a Mundo player, and right now Keen hasn't been gravitating towards it. He could take it here, and they could double ban against it, but maybe it's just a pick that Keen will move away from.
Yeah, we talked about Tahm Kench too. You see the priority here. It's been going up, and, well, not so much for Tushin. Definitely for Mata, it's still a good pick. Afreeca thinking about their own support pick. They're going to go with the Morgana here.
Risky a choice because Morgana does represent a champion that can't face check if it's in the support role. Alistair would have given them a face check, and now Morgana's a flex pick. Could still be played by Aiming or Tucson in this draft. If Pawn was in the lineup, we would say mid lane, because Pawn, of course, a very noted mid lane player of the Morgana, but on the side of Afreeca, expecting it to be support or carry. Seeing the bans, they're banning champions that we see strong from both Smeb and Keen, but also the pick into the Mundo, and it does draw a Mundo ban, even though it's Keen who's on the side of Afreeca.
Yeah, we'll see if they go with another strong top lane ban. Maybe go ahead and pick up the GP or something like that. We have Keen 2-0 on the Gangplank so far. They are going to take away the Kennen. So definitely thinking about perhaps a shot up in the top lane. Generally on the red side, you can have that last counter pick, so they might save it for that, but let's wait and see.
I'm very interested to see who is going to get the counter pick in the top lane. When you see Kennen and Darius banned, you think, well, maybe he just wants to play a tank, something safe that they lock in at the first pick on the red side. But because it's Smeb, you never necessarily want to blind pick your top laner into a player who is very adept at playing the carry. So a lot of mind games going on here, and of course the Yasuo is still a flex, where we are in the draft right now. Can Afreeca find another draft choice that is a flex pick, or will they just blind pick for top lane? Kind of what I'm wondering.
You were talking about aggressive top laners. The Rumble still available for Smeb if you wanted to go for it, but the Gragas coming in here for Afreeca.
And it is a flex pick as well. Most likely going to be top lane for Keen. He's played it a couple of times already. As a sort of champion that doesn't get run over by anyone, so likely a Gragas top lane. On the side of KT, they can go for the Gen G special. Ezreal and Tahm Kench put together for safety. Seems very likely for them to consider. And wow, we're going to see Cho'Gath versus Gragas as the most likely top lane matchup.
Definitely a bit of a weird one. Not what you would see very often. It's actually Smeb's first time playing it here in summer, including Rift Rivals. They do pick up the Ezreal to finish things off. Definitely very good against the Yasuo, the Morgana, the Gragas engage. You can just hop away from that one. Good damage, rather, from range here with the Ezreal.
Very strong siege comp from KT. They load up with 2 items onto the Ezreal and the Zoe poke, and they can have Cho'Gath, Trundle, and the Tahm Kench with disengage, and Kuro's just going to jump straight onto the Fizz. Second Fizz of the season after Lava played it. Bahamut Live Esports 1-0. It's another way to attack the mid lane Zoe, but it's not the Malzahar that we might see from Crown. It's actually going to be the mid lane Fizz. Cool to see.
It's definitely a very interesting one. You talked about the mid lane. Fizz versus Zoe should be good, but then you think about throwing fishes onto anyone else. The Tahm Kench should easily be able to eat them up, save those other targets. Also, the Cho'Gath and the Trundle, not going to be very good targets in general. But we'll see if he can make something happen with that Fizz.
And it does mean that they go away from Yasuo versus Zoe, which is actually a pretty decent matchup for Yasuo. It might not be dominant, but we've seen it many times picked into. And we end up with Yasuo and Morgana. Very interesting duo lane. Morgana can help push, but no knock-up synergy to set up the last breath in the bot lane. Happily, Gragas can throw his cast, and that's usually enough to get a last breath in a team fight, and the Fizz ultimate will also be a helpful one. But going for Yasuo and Morgana, a bit of a hodgepodge duo against Deft and Mata on one of the most safe and reliable duos in Ezreal and Tahm Kench. Because it's Deft and Mata, you look at it and say, this could be a weak point for Afreeca.
Yeah, definitely can be. Certainly Afreeca's lineup is not lacking any damage either. You have the Yasuo, the Fizz, and the Kindred. You have the burst there from the Yasuo Fizz. You have the Kindred for a bit of that 80 carry sustained damage from the jungle, as well as its utility. A couple of supporting picks in the Gragas and the Morgana. Whereas KT's lineup, they have that poke you were talking about. The siege is going to be very nice. You have the pillar, the Trundle Zoe combination we've seen has been very effective in the past as well.
And if Fizz gets going, Kindred and Fizz invading sounds pretty damn scary for Score to deal with.
Yeah.
So Score's pathing, and indeed the level 1 setups when it comes to Scuttle Crabs and all the other things to talk about there. I feel like we're going to have a lot to uncover when we roll out the game.
Yeah. So guys, we got the word. Game 1 is ready to go. Let's jump into KT Rolster versus the Afreeca Freecs for Game 1 here tonight. Oh, starting off fast here.
Fast and Furious, we had to interrupt the chants for a second there.
That one KT fan was not happy with the original cheer.
Well, you know what I heard from that chant? I heard desperation, Valdez, and while it's only the first match of the second round robin for both Afreeca and KT, you sense the desperation. We talked about it in the pre-match rollout. These teams are not entrenched in the top 5. New teams like Hanwha and Griffin are firming as top 5 teams. So for KT and Afreeca, 2 teams who have been in the playoffs every season in memory. I'm talking about at least 4 or 5 consecutive seasons here for both. This is when you have to start turning around your season. And thankfully for them, because they both went to Rift Rivals, it means one Rift Rivals squad will actually win today to join Kingzone as the only other Rift Rivals squad who's won this season, this week.
Yeah. But while one team will win, another one will lose. So we will have that eventually go to 2 and 5, regardless of who does take the victory in this matchup. Man, looking at this Afreeca composition, it almost feels like solo queue, except the top laner would probably have to be Fiora or like Jace or something like that. It's the only way it would make true sense for solo queue.
See the binding hitting, but sure, that's going to be fine. Just looking at the jungle pathing here, it was a red buff start for Mowgli, but he wants to go for the bot side scuttle. Reason for this is because he desperately wants to provide coverage for his duo lane, and of course the happy coincidence that it's also going to be the marked scuttle. But getting any assistance he can for the Morgana Yasuo is very important for Mowgli, because he doesn't want to spend too much time bot side if he doesn't have to.
Yeah, been playing a lot of Kindred recently. It's a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
Trying to gather the marks, and it definitely puts a lot of focus on the jungle versus jungle matchup. You know, trying to get in there get your own marks, out-jungle your opponent.
And after the 2 sets of buffs on 8-12 and 8-13, you basically know that if you all-in another enemy jungler, you almost certainly win unless it's a very edge case, like Pantheon, maybe Elise. You can be outplayed, but in general, you have an insane skirmishing advantage over the meta jungle pool. So you definitely feel powerful when you're playing that solo queue Kindred.
Yeah. Solo queue, it's good. It's good here in competitive play as well. It's one of the things I do like about all the changes to the patches and stuff. You get all these quote-unquote new champions coming out here in LCK because you just don't see them very often. You know, the Swain coming back, the Heimerdinger, the Kindred coming back, and even Fizz tonight here for Kuro.
And let's uncouple the why, because it's not just, hey, Fizz is pretty good into Zoe, because that's been true for a long time. There hasn't been any changes to Fizz that would really big up his potential in this matchup. The actual change is the Kindred Valdez, because the moment you lock in Kindred, you see a Trundle, he's going to have a skirmishing advantage. You know that you're going to have a strong jungler, so you're going to win the 2v2 in many cases.
Yeah.
The Kindred allows picks like Kassadin in the past and Fizz here a bit more reliability, because you can either invade with your jungler or rely on your jungler to cover and help in 2v1 or 2v2 scenarios. So the stronger your jungle pick that you can blind pick early in the draft, the more risky your mid lane pick can be, and you just rely on the Kindred to do the heavy lifting in the early game.
Yeah. We were expecting perhaps the counter pick in the top lane as part of the reason. We did see the Cho'Gath coming up here for Smeb, but instead, Afreeca just went for that safe Gragas and then saved the counter pick for the mid lane later on.
Does tell you a lot of information that they believe that Gragas can be blind picked and get through any lane, and I tend to agree. Very, very safe. The buffs made him even more reliable in lane, can trade with 1 point in his W. You can max the body slam second, and that means you're having significantly less cooldown. It's actually 2 seconds per level if you're connecting with an enemy champion or an enemy in general. So does end up being more maneuverability. The fat man, he's been at the gym, he's been working out, and now he's more limber than ever.
Yeah, doesn't really show, but
he's got no mana at the moment.
Yeah, look at this. Cho'Gath definitely good in his own right at skirmishing, especially up against melee tanks up at the top side. Having his way up there. It's Spo TV. We're back here, so we do have the Scuttle Crab counter. Afreeca Mowgli was able to get the first mark on one of the Scuttle Crabs, but at least the Trundle here for score is able to pick up the third one.
And with the World Cup final tonight, it's one of the last times to use our soccer terminology, football terminology. Let's annoy everyone and appease everyone at the same time.
Good.
It's 1-1 at the moment. 2-1, I should say. Oh boy. KT Rolster looking good. Who you got for tonight? France versus Croatia.
I think the obvious choice feels like France. They definitely have a lot of very talented members in the front line. I don't really know what to call them. I don't know what their positions are called, but
central midfield winger.
They run
striker.
The left winger up in the top side. Yeah, he seems pretty good.
Mbappe.
They run really fast. That's the thing I noticed about France. That would be my analysis. A lot of people were calling for our World Cup cast. I don't think I would do very well. I guess I could be the play-by-play over there.
I guess we should discuss this, because we haven't been around for a long time. We know very well, Atlas and I, that we would be cricket commentators together.
Yeah.
What would you and I be? Would we be baseball commentators?
Baseball? But neither of us know anything about baseball.
But wouldn't that make it better, Valdez?
The thing about baseball is that you need to know, like, its vast history, right? The 100 years of baseball or more,
I can say the words Babe Ruth and know sort of what I'm talking about.
Mickey Mantle, I know he was a player.
What do you know about UCal?
Level 6, the Fizz popping off already. First blood to Mowgli, though the bubble is going to go down onto Kuro. And now Score trying to get ahead here. Mowgli being safe decides to flash away with the Trundle ultimate on top of him. Decides, no, I will not take that trade. And in the end, it's a 1-for-1.
The value of the trouble bubble there was the same as a Shark because of when the stun armed. Under the turret, not enough levels in your playful trickster to be able to get away. Sakura goes down in the 1-for-1, and they chase away the Kindred. Pretty good result overall, given the scenario it began with. So we're watching the replay. Kuro does hit the fish. That's what it's all about, predicting the movements of UCal. Doesn't try, use the realm warp to get away. He'll go down the portal jump, I should say, but Kuro had already invested all of his mobility. The flash is not enough, and Score does clean up the kill.
Yeah, you know, you think you want to Playful Trickster out of it to perhaps try to dodge the trouble bubble, but when you're trying to do your entire burst combo before the Zoe can get away, sometimes you can't have your ideal setup to also get away. Good counter gank timing from Score too. He was right there, even though Afreeca was setting that up 2v1. He was able to get the return kill and make it very worthwhile for him.
So similar things yesterday in terms of coverage, jungling. Always good to see junglers who are a bit ahead of the play. Trick was really good about that in game number 2 for BBQ. They went on to win. Watching Score whack away. Whack-a-mole with this Trundle on the bot side. Again, Score is really about loss minimization, and because he's against the Kindred, doesn't want to skirmish Kindred. If he's not in the right spot, he's probably not going to be contributing too much, so reads the play well. That's the Score way. Great article posted by Invent Global today, talking about his history and transition from Startail top laner into best jungler in the world he got to today. 6.5 years of not winning a major title, but 6.5 years of being just relevant in so many different positions on the Rift.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yep.
I would tend to agree with that. And I know you guys were giving Peanut a little bit of a playful message saying, hey, Score is a little bit better than you. Pick it up. Peanut, unfortunately, hasn't been looking too fantastic, I'd like to say. I feel like it's part of the reason why Kingzone has been struggling a little bit, even though they're still at second place, I believe, here. Second or third in LCK. We'll see if they can turn that boat around.
Don't really want to talk about Kingzone after yesterday, Valdez. Yeah. We'll retire Kingzone for a while and focus on a freaking KT.
Talk about the bot lane. It's been going very even so far. The Morgana certainly helping out the Yasuo in the bottom side. And Kamada just forced to play a little bit more passively. They're not really going ahead and being aggressive in that lane. And you were talking about this duo, Mowgli and Kuro on the Fizz Kindred, going to be able to take control of the mid lane and take the first Drake.
Zoe with her summoners down is so much more susceptible than Fizz with his summoners down. And because of the aforementioned power of the Kindred, they do have the inside track, whatever the case in the bot lane, to make that Drake play. So nice to see. The Kindred starting up strong. Saw a couple of Kindreds fall behind and be a non-factor earlier in the season, but Kindred is consistently jumping up, and you wonder if the Kindred bans start to have to come out on blue side if you're not willing to first pick it.
You saw what can do.
Yeah.
We didn't really want to talk about Kingzone, but we can talk a little bit about Jin Air and how they're trying to turn their season around.
Double Glad play. It's like a double rainbow, Val. That's insane.
It just never really happens very often, but it happened this week at LCK. But yeah, he's been looking fantastic on the pick. And Mowgli looking good so far, but unfortunately has fallen a level behind. They take the Mountain Drake, but KT turned that around. Score coming over to the Rift Herald is going to be able to take control of this objective.
But this is just reading the map well. You saw Afreeca take it. Drake on the bottom side, that's where their control wards are, that's where they're strong. KT's counter pick was on the top lane, the Cho'Gath taking standing trades with the Gragas and being able to situationally harass him out. A lot more mana sustain for the Cho'Gath. Honestly, Cho'Gath and Gragas' laning patterns are pretty similar, but because of Cho'Gath's passive, he keeps up the Stain War a little bit better. That means he has lane control, and they take the Rift Herald around it. And the moment that we see 2 items on the Ezreal, a little bit more on the Zoe, and the Rift Herald also, the sieges that we already said is the clear way for KT to blow up in this game in the mid game, are where really the game is going to be won or lost. If they pull off perfect sieges with control wards on both sides, avoid engage, I think KT can get a huge snowball gold lead in the mid game. If they don't, or if Afreeca get the successful collapse, it's going to be very difficult to execute in team fights for KT Rolster.
I think it's going to come down to which KT shows up tonight, because we've seen so many times where KT, they get ahead and they get cocky. They get overconfident. They say, yeah, we can take any fight right now. Nobody can play with us. We're the best. And then they decide to throw in the red side jungle against an engaged comp. Someone gets picked and all of a sudden Baron goes away. We've seen it before. Haven't seen too much of this, though. The Kindred running down the Tom Kent one-on-one in the enemy jungle is able to effectively push Mata out of the jungle.
Basically, his entire health bar in one QW. Full rotation shows you the power of that early game Kindred. Bot lane, that's a lot of CC hitting on to death, but aiming doesn't want to take the last breath.
Suppose deciding it's not worth it after all with the Tom Kents that was nearby. Beginning to take some good, effective trades up on the top side for now. Looks like he started with the corrupting potion, so he has a little bit of that extra sustain. You were talking about what Cho'Gath has, but I suppose if the Gragas picks up that potion, helps him out in the matchup.
Afreeca have double control ward, triple around the mid lane, but one on the top and bot side, which means Zoe has to be so scared. You have to stand back so far because the engage range of the fish is, as we know, a very long line skill shot, basically an Ezreal Q length, maybe even further. And he has no idea which side the Kindred is on, so he can't hug top side or bot side. And just giving up a lot of CS and control here. Still is even, but even against a melee mid laner is never ideal for the mid lane Zoe.
Seeing more of these trades, Keen getting a bit more aggressive. I'm getting a little bit excited for those trades as it looks nice, but I suppose Smeb shouldn't be going down. Big rotation by Afreeca. They want to take the first turret here, and they notice that Tom Kent is out of position, so they want to get this turret, but you'll notice that score in the mid lane with the Rift Herald going to lay that down, trying to trade the mid turret, which is better in terms of positioning and map presence, but they will lose the first blood turret to Afreeca.
As general analysis, you're completely correct, but do consider you are trading Deft and Marta's turret for the mid lane turret. And Deft and Marta, if they take first turret, you trust Marta to take over the map on a Thresh, even on a champion like the Tahm Kench. They rotate so well when bot lane is unlocked. For once, their turret goes down first. We almost never see KT lose bot turret first or even draft their bot lane first because they always want to get Deft and Marta unleashed on the map. So naturally, you would normally say, big turret health trade, you get the mid lane turret, you get the inner turret, a little bit of damage on it, advantage KT, but because Deft and Marta are going to be forced into this duo lane and not be able to rotate as freely, I think Afreeca's going to actually be pretty content with the trade they made.
Yeah, does open up the Asuo to push his lane, begin to edge towards the mid lane and try to set up plays with perhaps the Gragas and the Fizz. It's an immense amount of burst damage, and you even have a little bit more of a rope to go ahead and try to dive or do a little bit more risky stuff because you do have the Kindred with you if it does end up going into, 5v5 fights.
Pretty intriguing itemization choice by Kuro. You almost never see Zhonya's rush on the Fizz. It's definitely going to be a lower damage build, but it seems like he realizes that there's actually damage on all other members of the team. Even Morgana does some decent damage to assist, so he's putting trust in being a utility Fizz to begin. He thinks the fish in the right spot's going to be enough, and going for the more defensive choice to open up. So the Lich Bane going to be delayed till probably second item.
Yeah. Just talking about it when the draft was going on, Kindred and Yasuo already net yourself so much damage. You mentioned the Morgana as well. Now it looks like Afreeca, they're not really scared to go for the fight. Really nice trouble bubble here onto Mowgli. He's going to have him disengage.
Watch the Gragas. He's actually going to be rotating first. Cho'Gath being a bit greedy, staying in lane is Smeb.
Yeah. Ends up being not much of anything to do at all, as Afreeca decide they're not ready to take the engage. They were a bit delayed by Mowgli getting hit by the bubble, and the push was happening down the bottom side with Deft, and so they'll just return to their lanes. Gragas to the top, Yasuo to the bottom. We do have the second Drake that has spawned here. KT with position on it now. May want to consider that Cloud Drake.
Read on the draft is that KT need to be the proactive team. So this present point, losing out on the map is not what Afreeca want. They know this game could turn if they lost 3 or 4 kills and a Drake at this point in the game, and their teamfight comp may never come online. So they're happy enough to go back, pick up farm, fall back, and continue to slow down the pace of the game, whereas KT, they're just looking to get their lanes in the right spot to actually start the sieges they've set up for.
Smeb gonna be a bit cheeky, steal the Rift Scuttler. Nobody's focusing on the top side of the map right now because he had the push. He was able to get that small objective, but this is the objective we were looking at, the Cloud Drake. Zoe, Yukal, and Mata decide to recall, and Afreeca just take another free Cloud Drake to add to their mountain.
Not a lot of team fight on the side of KT unless they're the first in position. They were out of position on the Drake for a long time. They had a ward over. They knew it was started, and they said, let's give it up. It's only going to be a mountain Drake. It's not the biggest deal, so I think that's fine from the side of KT, but they need to actually be pushing towards what they want soon. They need to be making the next assertive move in the game. A lot of people were sitting on a lot of gold. We're just seeing some big itemization completions. 2 items on the Ezreal. There is the Zonias and the Sheen, so Lichbane on the way from Kuro. Let's watch for KT's setup. So I'm going to be looking for control wards, exclusive vision, and just problem-solving their way to actually getting these 2 outer turrets that so far are pretty damn healthy, all things considered.
You mentioned how 3 or 4 kills and an objective can turn the game in an instant. Right now we're sitting on a very equal game in terms of just numbers, right? The gold is basically the same. They have that fight now, though. A score coming in here. A really nice pillar is going to catch Tucson in a bad spot, but here comes the Fizz ult to knock Score back and save Tucson's life.
Score just seems to be establishing position. No one was going to follow up on that. He's just trying to harass and make Afreeca a bit more predictable. Honestly, you might make a play like that if you score and hope to get, say, a TP out of Keen to get a teleport advantage. In the end, not able to get anything significant other than the Fizz ult. But in the meantime, Deft have been pushing on the bot side. You can see the Yasuo showing their respect, knowing that Score was bottom side.
Deft playing a nice macro game, I suppose, just mindlessly pushing in the bottom side with the Ezreal. Tom Kent decides that he's not ready to fight until he gets that Muramana, perhaps. And is just pushing, ends up getting that bottom turret. And they get another nice objective here.
And now you look back and say, if you're the Afreeca coach or even the KT coach, how did we get that outer bot lane turret? We got Cho'Gath to walk down from top lane. We had Score take a trade with the enemy and draw out some cooldowns. And in the meantime, Deft pushed. So it was actually a very bloodless way to get a big map objective. We were just saying, how does KT get down these 3 outer turrets? They only had mid lane down earlier. They're able to get a second one. Let's see if they also set up around top side and get Smeb out of this extended laning phase.
Yep. So far, they've just been chilling up there. I'm curious to see the amount of marks that we do have on the Kindred. We have a Rift Scuttler spawn here, so it could be around 3, 4, and might just push him over the edge. Seems like he's been doing pretty well with the Kindred so far in terms of marks.
Key numbers, as we know, 4 is the first big one. That gets you the 75 range, and then 25 attack and spell range increase per 3 marks. So 4, 7, 10 onwards. We saw Score hit, I believe, 13 or 14 when he popped off in that very long game here at the Nexon Arena, the last match against MVP before we went to Rift Rivals. So we'll see if we have a similar performance from Mowgli. It needs the game to go long. I was wondering if there was infinite scaling. There isn't, but eventually you can get to 750 range if you get enough marks, which would be just the most insane Kindred.
Kindred already pretty strong. Once you get there, you're going to be chunking people down from massive range. You never want to let a Kindred get that bad. You guys have probably experienced it in solo queue recently. I know I have. Another guy who's been popping off on the Kindred. The last I saw in that Game 3 up against Kingzone, I think he had 10 or 11. He was already getting up to a really high number. So we've been seeing a lot of games where the Kindred gets to this level that's just way too much. And will KT let it get there, or will they begin pushing anytime soon?
And I would say we have our second best Kindred player playing in our second series, as Songwon has been excellent on that big 3-0 in a row after losing his first game. So I imagine we're going to have sky-high contestant rate. If it ends up being Haru versus Songwon, very, very likely to see a lot of Kindred in that series.
Yeah. We've been seeing a lot of different champions that get to a certain level on this patch and then they just look unstoppable. Mundo's the first one that comes to mind. He gets enough items and then he just, you know, your team's ahead, you're diving turrets, taking 20 turret shots, you really don't care about anything. You don't give any Mundos because you are Mundo. Kindred definitely seems to be another champion that gets to that level eventually. It'll be interesting to see if we have teams really play around the Kindred. We saw the aggressive Fizz, or maybe something even more aggressive that can invade with that Kindred would be nice.
We actually see some disagreement in the meta, though. A Kindred priority, like you mentioned, goes up and down depending on the team. This game, actually, Swain fell through picks and bans, which is a very really surprising one, given it can be first picked on Blue's side with almost no risk. Both these teams have played plenty of Swain this season, so maybe just a recent trend in scrims that the Swain priority for these two went down. That's the one where I was looking at the pick bans, being like, wait, where does Swain go? And it just wasn't picked up at all. We've seen Zoe fall through pick and ban as well in the past.
Yeah, I mean, these two teams, they don't play the Swain in the bot lane, they play it in mid, right? Yukal famously.
Daddy Yukal.
Yeah, I mean, he was Daddy Yukal on the Swain, basically. Kuro so far is 4-0 on Swain this season. So We got a couple of really good Swain players in the mid lane, but we just did not see it here. Hasn't been too much action. Both of these teams showing a lot of respect. Afreeca just haven't found the fight that they've been looking for in KT. It's just been trying to set something up with the Pillar of Trundle from Score, but they haven't had that engage they wanted either.
And our expectation is if the game goes long, it suits the Afreeca Freecs draft more than it does the KT draft. That isn't just an 100-0 thing. I think Smeb, if he situationally silences Mowgli, Kuro, or aiming at the right time and they get a pop, they can rewrite one of these team fights. But otherwise, Afreeca have a pretty fearsome 5v5. We might get to see that 5v5 unleashed soon. Braga starting on this top lane turret, but the Drake started by KT.
Well, we talked about Kindred and her strengths. She's really good at taking objectives. You don't want to give double Mountain Drake to a Kindred team. That would just be suicide. We're talking, 10, 15-second Barons, right? They have control fully over the bottom side river. KT going to deny that second Mountain Drake.
KT the one with control for the first time this game on the bottom side, so they do take the Drake, but it's an answer to the top lane turret, so a very 50-50 trade. 50-50s continue. KT Rolster, when will they make their first attempt to increase the pace of the game? It's certainly not going to be Deft, who says, how about a long game? How about an Archangel Star?
Yeah, he's sitting here. He's just farming the side waves. He will join his team when they call him, but he'll just immediately go back to farming. Kind of feels like we're back on 8.1, where it was just 1 kill per 10 minutes. We're getting there, right? 2 kills in 24 minutes. It's above average, I suppose you could say, in terms of the lack of kills in this game.
There's a pretty big, obvious elephant in the room as to why, though, Valdez. Remember, both these teams lost 2-0. Coming back from Rift Rivals, I think both the coaches would have seen a litany of mistakes from their charge and said, please keep it simple. Let's get our macro down. I don't know what we were doing against our opponents, so we need to improve our overall level. I think both teams have done that in this game. There's been no obvious mistakes, and we've seen some fiestas in the last couple of days. But I do feel like it's a bit more forgiving for Afreeca with their draft than it is for two-threat KT to pull off theirs. But this game will hinge on a big move. I think a team fight is probably going to have to be the big separator. And if you lose a team fight after there's been such a low interaction 25 minutes, that might just decide the game.
Yeah. Well, looking for interaction here is Afreeca. Red buff on the Kindred and Deft with the magnificent respect, but he is going to get hit by that Fizz ultimate. See you later. Did not have Arcane Shift or the Flash, and I was talking about Kindred teams and their Barons. We'll see if they decide to go for it. Looks like Keen is going to back for now, but they'll at least get control. Here we go. They're going to turn. It's 5v4. The TP comes in from Smeb.
Remember, there is a feast here to secure as well. Let's see what happens.
Looks like the sleep isn't going to get hit anyone. Here comes Deuce trying to engage. Fantastic follow-up there from Keen. Now Smeb and Mana on the run. They're only going to stun up this Cho'Gath, who is so tanky. Even has the stopwatch, he's not going to go down. The follow-up here, though, onto Score is going to be shut down. And KT, they deny the Baron perfectly.
They only lose Deft, and they deny the Baron. Teleport back up on Deft. He's going to rejoin. Health bars are still decent from Afreeca. They don't have to back. So no Baron opportunity for KT. The game bursts into a bit of action, but it's not going to decide the game.
That was just the 1 kill in our 20-minute to 30-minute time block. We can sit back now for 4 minutes as nothing's going to happen. KT Deft, though, they are going to rotate up to the top side, pick up this other turret, as with the TP that Deft did commit to the top side, does net them another objective.
They need to slow down and reset some expectations. And remember, we've seen a lot of games where we've had AoE Wombo. You think of Kingzone yesterday. And we talk about how when those cooldowns are down, the enemy team will prosper in every other area. This is Siege versus team fight, so when the initiating tools are down, the Zoe and the Ezreal can walk up and take structures. I don't know why we didn't show how sick the max range fish was from Kuro, but he's thrown out 2 and gotten his opponent both times, and that starts to really justify the Fizz pick, which is usually too risky for most of our mid laners.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it was the second time we've seen it here in summer. You need to have a lot of practice, right, to be able to pull off some of the mechanics that Fizz can do, but Kuro in some of the best shape of his life. He's been playing so many different picks in the mid lane. He's been very successful so far. Pulls out the Fizz, says, hey, I can play this too. It's very nice to see.
He's always had a very wide champion pool. There are some picks he's historically struggled on, but I think spring season of this year, to me, was him answering those critics, the Azir, the famous one, that he actually was starting to draw bans against, and his one-off picks have been looking better and better. The Fizz seeming to group with that. So, a lot of credit to Kuro, a player who, you know, was seen as the 5th Beetle of the Rocks Tigers for a long time, coming into his own and being the captain of Afreeca. Speaking of Afreeca, they got that control over the Baron. Let's see if we can see a last breath this time. We didn't see one last time as Kuro is lying in wait.
He's waiting for that flank. He's gonna find Deft again. We are gonna have Mata nearby. He does get the Devour, but the knock up there from the Yasuo is gonna get the kill onto the top Kent. Deft does get away with his life, but Afreeca, they pick off another one. Yukao not done here yet. He's still trying to challenge. And Smeb super tanky in the front line. Looks like just 1 kill so far for Afreeca. They don't have the position on Baron to continue on to that. They'll just have to be satisfied with 1 more kill.
But this 100% fish accuracy has been insane from Kuro. Gets his man. They had the ward to know that he was walking up. Predicts the very predictable pathing, and while they don't get Deft, they get his best friend forever in Mata. Someone had to die for the sins of the Ezreal. Kuro goes back to the side lane. It's still not getting them objectives, but Afreeca know they're so close.
It's definitely pushing in Afreeca's favor little by little. 1 kill at a time. It's not the most action, but again, these are 2 of the best teams that we do have. Afreeca was one of the teams that a lot of people were saying should be #1 here in summer. Definitely looking good. KT has been trying to rid themselves of that inconsistency. Looking better over in international events. We'll see what they can do tonight.
The commentary has been so weird. I was the one who said before the season started, yeah, Afreeca versus KT, that's my expected final. And then now there's people saying, we didn't have our best team at Rift Rivals, what about Griffin? Yeah. There's been so much that's evolved. The meta is so different and has gone in different ways than you might have expected from the first day. That we really are very far away from knowing who the best team in Korea is. All you can do right now is say, well, it's Griffin, they've won the most games, and you can't disagree with that. Or you can say KT has some of the best players, and you can't disagree with that. There's a lot of declarative statements, but not a lot of answers. And that's why it's so fascinating right now, because we're no closer to knowing who the 3 representatives for Worlds will be from the LCK.
Yeah, lots of teams definitely looking to make a statement. Griffin and Hanwha Life, 2 of the biggest ones that we do have. Let's see how this game is going to turn out after all.
Still waiting for this big Yasuo ultimate. Yasuo himself, no Infinity Edge, but does have a bit of durability already in the Sterix. The game has been such a tease. 30 minutes of almost Titanic action, but not the actual underline on that.
It's been nice to see so much stopwatch usage. I feel like it's so nice on so many different meta champions nowadays. The Mundo, the Swain, and Zoe even, right? We saw it on the Cho'Gath earlier. It was part of the reason why he didn't get picked off. See it on almost everybody here on the Rift. KT, they put together a small little push here. You're talking about that siege. This is what they're good at. Trying to find that angle to push on in, but with Kuro on the left side here, looking for that angle once again. Looks like KT will back off for now.
Well, the stopwatch is used, but so many still available in inventories means that you might still see plenty of counterplay. Kuro scouted out on a ward. Watching Mowgli, that's getting free hits on the Cho'Gath.
Smeb doesn't really seem to care for a while. Keen actually is going to get hit by that pillar, taking a lot of damage in the front line. The 2 tanks doing their job. 1 cask is awkwardly thrown out there by Keen, trying to knock the Cho'Gath back. Had he done that, probably would have been a kill, but was off the mark on that one ability.
Off the mark, and if he was just doing it lazily for the ultimate, I think Yasuo wouldn't have been able to complete a kill either, so not really sure what was going on there. Yasuo himself has gotten a very important timing. He will have his Infinity Edge for the next fight and still has the stopwatch for the eventual Guardian Angel, but the stasis reset. Items are now there for Afreeca. This is where I think Afreeca will be very confident to take a 5v5 fight.
Yeah, I think you're right about that cast, right? It's probably aiming in the chat, in the voice chat, saying, I'm really strong, guys. Try to set me up. I will do the work. And, you know, wasn't really executed perfectly, but you can see the idea they're going for.
But actually, it could have just been no communication, throwing out the ult, and aiming saying, next time I have IE gold, I need to recall. That's also very possible, because he got IE seconds after the ultimate was thrown out. Again, we're just guessing, we're just inferring, but the fact that he was sitting on 2,000 odd gold suggests that there are better timings to go in, because you go in then, you lose the fight, and then you buy your IE, you might lose anyway. So probably smart not to pull the trigger.
We did see the focus there on Mowgli, by the way. He only has 4 stacks so far in this game, so the last one he was able to pick up was that Rift Scuttler. Kuro in an awkward spot here. Looks like he should be okay, but Smeb looking to collapse into the red side jungle, but Mowgli saying no after all. Definitely debating going in here onto Smeb. You saw Kuro thinking about it, Tucson looking to land a binding, aiming nearby as well. If they could get a knock-up, maybe that would have been the kill, but Keen was in the mid lane.
Kuro only now is revealed. They got the Banshee Veil off of Yukal. What a tease this game has been.
I know, what is this? Super tense game so far. Basically, nothing has happened. A couple of picks by Afreeca, but then really good responses from behind by KT. A lot of the 2 tanks from the one from either side. They've been taking so much damage. Certainly, the damage per minute taken for these 2 champs has been a lot, but no kills so far onto them.
Seraph's up on the Ezreal now, so has got the fully stacked double tier build. That being said, the ult hit Mowgli without clipping anyone else. It only did about 400 damage, so it's not going to be ending the game.
Oh, they're looking for it. There's the knockup. They finally find the choke-up, but Mata, he's going to be in position, and he does get that devour. Means that he does survive with the follow-up. The dodge on to score here, but he is so tanky with the Trundle ultimate. Now that poke coming through, aiming getting a little bit low here, as is Mowgli. Lamb's Respite is going to have to come out here. The turn, it only hits the choke-up, and now they're on the run. KT looking for a pick, but even the Gragas looking to get away. Flashing forward here is Yukal. Can he even kill the Morgana? The answer is going to be no, and we are denied another kill here. Nobody has died.
Insane that no one dies. Afreeca thought they had their timing, but flashes were off. They were under a turret. Here's the ult.
Oh, so close. Aiming freaked out a little bit.
There was actually the outside chance if it hit Morgana, she could die. But they know Afreeca have recalled. Can they take the Baron? They have the Cho'Gath.
That they do, and they have that one Mountain Drake. Look at how aggressive Keen is getting. He's looking to deny that DPS with the cast. Here comes Kuro looking for it, but the Feast comes in. Aiming on the backside. There's the stopwatch on Amada. He's looking for the knockup. He gets 2 people trying to get onto Depth here. He is almost going to take him out. Kuro looking to finish the job, and he does. But he does go down himself. Mowgli still on the chase. He's going to be able to get that Tom Kent. And now Smeb looks like he's all alone. And aiming has hunted down Yukal as well. Should be the 4 kills going over to Afreeca. Only score surviving with the Baron.
They beeline onto the Baron and say, let's just get it off the map. And they try to make an escape. They don't get the escape. The death timers are long, and I think the death timers might actually allow Afreeca to break the base.
I mean, we haven't had much action up until this moment. It's 35 minutes into the game. If you guys took a little nap during this one, you might have missed some of that time going by. The death timer is definitely really important. Still a long time, and it should be the inhibitor here going down in the top lane by Afreeca. It's only score once again with that Baron buff, and himself alone not going to be able to stop this push. In
hindsight, if the Fizz had somehow lived, maybe the game just ends, because there was another 25 seconds. Other people came up. You can see the recalls coming in. The Yasuo teleports in. Keen just uses his ult to try to slow down the Baron. It's not actually to set up a last breath. The Baron goes down. The fish picked up by Smeb. And from here, it's hunting season. There's no way to fully disengage for the team of KT. And specifically aiming, getting his own knock-up onto Deft and Mata meant that the cleanup was going to be 4 members minimum.
Depth trying his hardest to get out of dodge there. He got away from the Yasuo, but ran straight into a Fizz. Even if he did not die to the Fizz, was looking pretty grim for the rest of KT. So, interesting spot we find ourselves in. Score might be looking to push with this team with that Baron buff, but currently the lead in the gold and items will go over to Afreeca. Let's take a look at some of the damage. Morgana not doing much, but the Gragas actually with massive damage in that fight. Interesting numbers here.
He ain't got no burst, but he was there for so long and no one was hitting him. So comically, he was hitting 4 people with every ability he had that was AoE. Watching here in the mid lane.
Really awkward position for Afreeca. Not sure about that one, but it looks like Mowgli was on top of their second Cloud Drake, so
he just wants to get
towards him.
He just wants to get the Elder to spawn. He needs somewhere else to force KT to come out of hiding and actually force a fight. It's going to be a very late Drake spawn. But the Elder around the 43-minute mark. Kuro walks up. They're going to take this inhibitor down. We're closer and closer to action, Valdez. Amusingly, still only 9 kills in the game. Thought we were going to see a bloody one. It's been far away from that.
Yeah. KT, I suppose, with a little bit of safety on their minds. You mentioned the 0-2 loss to Hanwha Life. That can definitely do a bit of a number to your mental, if you will, here in Korea. Gonna force the stopwatch here, even the Zonias, onto Tucson as he gets hit by the trouble bubble. KT's still confident to look for the picks. They're trying to play to their strengths once again, try to land a trouble bubble and just poke ahead onto that Afreeca team.
Only frontliner for Afreeca is the Gragas, who may be comically tanky, but a Rupture, a Silence, the Trundle Ultimate, and anyone can be killed. That's why they have to be so careful here, Afreeca, with how they respect KT's comp. You see the Yasuo, he is the one to end a fight, but they actually have to set up the knock-up, and that has proven quite difficult because KT will not walk up away from this turret. Not often you see a 38-minute outer turret in mid lane be basically full health, but that's what we're seeing here.
They really had trouble pushing this one in. Fizz not the best in terms of sieging, but the action has been elsewhere. And with the lead, Afreeca still looking to push in onto this mid turret. There's the cast, but Deft immediately going to Arcane Shift out of that one. Kuro, once again, he's still waiting on the left side, just waiting for that moment to dive on in. But again, the Tahm Kench pick, shutting down a lot of the picks that were picked later by Afreeca, but they're still confident to look for the engages in these fights.
And they're also respectful enough to not play 1-3-1 or 4-1. They did have a huge minion wave. They will draw Ezreal. That means they will take this outer turret. So side wave control has worked really well. Previously getting that inhibitor has helped them out a lot. Now they push through mid lane.
It's a massive wave, by the way. Ezreal, not the best. He's good at taking down singular targets, but doesn't have that AoE wave clear outside of his ultimate, so he's going to be there for quite a while. You notice that Afreeca, because of that, is still looking to take down this mid inner turret. And you can see what I was talking about down here. Even the Nexus turret's going to take a little bit of damage.
We saw teams in a similar scenario to Afreeca fail to close out. Yesterday, of course, we had a lot of the bottom teams. BBQ got 2 Barons, couldn't close out. While we saw Afreeca return to mid lane again and again, it was with a slow push coming in on the top side that eventually allowed them to get the objectives they were setting up for. So side lanes babied a bit by getting inhibitor, was still relatively clean. We're looking over the tail of the tape. This game was within 2,500 gold to 5,000 gold for basically the entire time it's gone on. But as you can see, in terms of the minutes as they've gone, there was just pre-34 minutes, so little to show. That's why we're actually focusing on the 35 to 40 minute portion.
Yeah, that's where we've been. Afreeca in the lead. Still no objectives to take down, but we do have Baron coming up in 1 minute and 10 seconds. Currently, this Kindred doesn't have too many stacks, but is really strong in terms of the gold, in terms of the items, sitting on 4, 0, and 1 right now. Even pick up the Hex Drinker just to make sure he can survive against the Zoe poke just a bit more.
They're pushing through mid lane. They don't have a side wave coming for a while, as we can tell from the mini-map. Bit of a frustrating thing for them. An assist ping on the Krugs. Please help me out. It's 41 minutes. I need help with the Krugs.
Bit of a weird one. Maybe he meant to aim for the enemy Krugs. There's a mark on it right now. Wouldn't be a bad idea. Mentioning what the Tahm Kench can do. Look at this, and okay, they get the knock up here on a score. He's really tanky, but this Afreeca team is so far ahead. Trying to take him down, he is gonna flash away. It's taken so long to eventually take him out, but there he does go down. Binding is gonna land on a Cho'Gath. Keen taking a little bit of damage himself, but they get the jungler away from KT. Where will Afreeca turn from here?
Well, Baron spawns in 10 seconds. You see that Afreeca is happy to take a frontliner, and they make it so that KT have no one to damage. Now they're trying again.
Oh, they get the binding there, and the Devour is down. They get the knock up here on Tamada, but Smeb is all alone. Kuro, he just pushes them away. He does that burst to death and says, get out of the fight. Gonna take down Smeb and push everybody else away. And they're not done just yet. They want to get this catfish. Looks like they might be able to. There's the knock up, and they're looking for more. The flash on into death as well. He's gonna get solo. Yukal trying his best to carry this team by himself, but it's not looking too lucky for him, as Afreeca gonna win the fight in a big way.
They're gonna fall back. They're gonna take at least another inhibitor in the mid lane, you'd have to imagine, unless they actually have high priority elsewhere as Kuro.
They found him. There's the ace. Kuro doing big things on this fish, and now they're just pushing on in. The death timer's way too long right now. You still got 50 seconds on Zoe, 40 on Ezreal. You really have no DPS. It looks like Afreeca gonna go for the win.
Someone said he wins the race, say the Afreeca Freecs score trying to proxy the minions, but it's not going to be enough. This should be game one easily to the Afreeca Freecs.
There you have it, gonna take down that second Nexus turret. Afreeca, in a big way, gonna take down KT Rolster in game number 1.
Sometimes your draft expectations come true, and not necessarily in the sort of explosive way some might have hoped. But Afreeca saw that the end of the tunnel was bright for them. They knew eventually they would be able to outmatch the Siege Comp. The Siege Comp can do turret damage, it can poke if the enemy can't engage. But by the end, Afreeca could engage on any one member, and Zoe and Ezreal together could not DPS out a Gragas. Gragas could be a solo frontliner. Fizz could just rush in and disengage and zone away 2 threats. And that meant that all the threats of Afreeca, especially the Yasuo, are free hitting on to first score, then Smeb, and ending the game for Afreeca Freecs. KT Rolster could not afford to allow Afreeca to just scale up, but they couldn't get a big enough lead. They couldn't get the turrets early enough. And by the end, Afreeca Freecs, it may have taken a long time, but there was only one team in the race after 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Gragas definitely seems like this kind of pick that's slowly climbing up the ranks of the perceived pick ban list, but here we go.
Score walks up and tries to zone, but the problem is, consider what his DPS can do when Kuro's threatening, when Keen is unkillable. 2 people, Aiming and Mowgli, both of them carries, can take down the Trundle with no problem, and whoever KT can hit, at some points it's no one, at some points to Gragas. They try to exhaust the enemy Fizz, but he jumps away. They never have target access unless Afreeca decide they're all committing, and that's the problem the KT draft in team fights.
Yeah, and when Afreeca get ahead and the team fight is going in their direction, you force the Devour from the Tom Kents, you have the wind wall down, the Zoe and the Ezreal aren't doing much. It's just, it looks so one-sided for Afreeca. Had to go in their way first to make the team fights go this way, but they made it happen, and they did win the game in that way.
Have drafts where if the 2 teams run at each other, only one team can realistically win. That was Afreeca Freecs post 3 items and 30 minutes. So in the end, it will be Afreeca going up 1-0.
Yeah, good draft, good play out of this Afreeca team. We're gonna go to a quick 10-12 minute break before game number 2.
학교 다닐 때 7번이었는데 문호찬. 여기 7번인 거 제가. 여기 7번. 7번.
보너스 어떻게 했는데 너가 7번이?
안 따라와서. 어릴 때는 키순이었잖아.
그거는 형 너무 옛날이에요.
아, 그래? 미안하다.
형 너 국민학교 때 뭐
저희랑 좀 세대 차이 나네.
저희라고 하지 마. 나도 그랬어.
아, 야, 우리는 키순이었는데 아쉽네.
나도 키슨이었습니다.
너 뭐 했길래 폰 빨갛냐? 근데 뭐 벌써 했냐?
저요? 몰라요. 저 심하셨나봐요.
크리스마스 아니야.
아이고.
누구보다 빨갛게 남들가는.
어우 버논이에요. 저 생긴 거 몰라요. 우찬이가.
거기 보라 그래.
긴급 정보는 하나 얻었어. 하루가 핫도그 사 먹으러 갔어. 진짜?
뭐 말이 되나 이게?
말 안 되지.
야 말해봐.
조금해.
너 말해보라고.
아 말하고 있다고.
너 조그마다고.
형이 더 조그마다고.
네가 더 조그마거든.
형이 더 조그마거든.
말해봐. 야.
야
나 돌리고 있다고.
똑같다.
왜 똑같은데 돌리고 있는데.
나도 돌리고 있다고.
아.
똑같냐고.
나는.
형도.
너도 했냐?
아니 형도.
할만한데? 서포터가 없어서 그래. 서포터가 있으면 형 저 수박 먹고 골로 간다고.
그지. 그러겠지. 서포트하고 같이 이제 때리면. 왜 우리는 서포트 있잖아. 형네 서포트는 허접일 거야.
우리 서포터 허접이냐? 영하나 볼렛 조조. 아우 소리. 형 상품이다. 노답임. 네, 바로 보면 된다. 말씀해 주시면 됩니다. 끼고 있어. 어씨. 기분 반났어요. 안 닿아요, 저. 닿는데요, 저? 봐봐요.
그 반대쪽으로 하면 안 되는데. 양쪽 다 돼? 여기는?
나 연속 개 반.
아, 다 반대쪽 반대쪽.
집이네. 여기가 집었어요. 집이네. 형은요?
택도 너랑 비슷해.
안 돼, 안 돼. 가까운 어디 가셨나요?
아, 지금 화장실에서 똥 싸고 있어?
이러면은 다른 세상 되게 여러분들 시간 되게 촉박해지는데 밀리면 명 때문에
FLICKR 올랐다. 혁기도 보내줘야 되는 거 아니야? 혁기는 저 처음 챌린저 찍을 수 있었을 때 한 판 남았는데 혁기가 애쉬로 트롤에서 탑 1차 도망갔어. 같이 바텀 지었는데 저 남이 하고 있었는데 아 이거 답 없음 이러면서 목이 신고 애쉬로 그냥 탑 1차 따고 있었어. 시장이 시작했다. 남이에서 끝났어요. 뭐가 아닌데 탑을 왜 도망가는데 목이 신고. 남이니까 바텀에 그때 화나가지고 잠 못 자고 새벽까지 새벽도 10연패 했잖아 진짜로. 바텀에 러시람이 있는데 아니요. 껌 어디 있어 껌? 형요? 껌 어디 있어? 여기 있어요. 여기 써야 돼요 지금. 아 그래? 빨리 빨리 껌 맞춰야 됩니다. 껌 하나. 몇 개씩 찍어? 나 찍어. 메모로 본 건데.